So, Congresswoman, with the U.S. troops withdrawal, which is almost half complete, what's at stake for Afghan women, and how U.S. can ensure to protect these rights for women in Afghanistan?
Well, first of all, it's good to be with you. You know, these are perilous times, obviously, as the United States withdraws from Afghanistan. And first of all, my hats off to the very brave women in Afghanistan who continue to stand up and fight for their rights. So much progress has been made, at least in some parts of Afghanistan, over the last almost, 19 years. Women are in school, they're in government, they're in business, they're in medicine, leading happy, productive lives, much better than 20 years ago. And so, of course, there is a real risk and a fear as the United States leaves Afghanistan and the Taliban advancing, that many of those rights will be lost. And it is it's not a made up fear, it's real. So just to say that many of us here in the United States and around the world, we recognize that. We want to put a spotlight on that, and we want to try to do what is reasonably possible, not only to preserve the rights that women have gained, but to continue to allow girls and women to advance, because not only is it better for themselves and their families when women are free, when they're free to pursue their dreams, when they're educated, when they're healthy, it's better for the places that they live and for their countries and for the world. So this is an important mission for everyone, wherever they live, to make sure that the girls and the women in Afghanistan continue on a path of good progress. So what can we do? Here in the United States, as Congress, as we take a look at, for example, our budget, we have to make sure that the Afghan security remains as robust as possible. We should be funding the NGOs, those are the nonprofit organizations that work with civil society to promote the rights of girls and women, to promote education, to ensure access to healthcare. And we have to have diplomatic and financial incentives that prevent the Taliban from a deterioration of the rights of women.
So you spoke about Afghan security forces. Taliban are getting more ground and their mentality hasn't changed. Also, they abandoned the peace talks, which President Biden preferred diplomacy over continuing war, and the troops are departing. How it will help Afghanistan in the long run, like defining the relationship with the U.S., also protecting Afghan women?
I didn't quite get the first part of the question. Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, sure. So the Afghan security forces, you mentioned that they need support. So also they still look for, somehow NATO also said that they will continue supporting Afghan forces and to train them in a third country, and US also providing aerial support when needed. So how it can really ensure that Taliban doesn't collapse or collapse the government?
Well, let's start with the peace process itself, which is important that women maintain a presence. Incidentally, the research shows that when women are at the peace table, there's a much better chance for a longer success of whatever is decided. And apparently the peace talks are going to start again soon, shortly, I think in Qatar.
Yes.
And I'm hoping and expecting that, I know there have been 4 women negotiators. They're very, very brave. And I hope they will continue to be in the process. So It would be helpful if we could get this agreement could be, done before the United States completely withdraws. I don't know if that's a possibility, because I know the president is aiming for September, mid-September for the withdrawal, but I think that would be helpful to get as much into that agreement before the withdrawal. And the agreement's going to have to contain not only ensuring the continued rights for women, but obviously there's got to be an agreement for a place for the Afghan government to continue. And then from the United States point of view, as I said, we have to continue to, and not only the United States, but the world must continue to shine a light on what's happening. And we must continue to use any diplomatic means we have and financial incentives to make sure that human rights are protected. And yes, human rights are protected, and the violence dissipates.
Taliban threatened Taliban threatened neighboring countries for hosting or having a base for US forces. What's your reaction to this threat?
To the threat?
Yes.
Well, I don't believe the United States should cower to the Taliban. I know that part of our role in discussion with the Taliban is to make sure that there is no that Afghanistan is never used again for terrorists to attack our country. But Taliban, United States should not cower to the Taliban. I don't know what more I should say about that.
That's exactly right. Thank you so much, ma'am. So Ambassador Khalilzad, when he was at the hearing, expressed his concern that when the troops leave, with the Taliban gaining more ground, the government will collapse. And at the same time, the rights of women and minorities, everything is in danger. What has to be done to avoid this?
Well, I think that's a real fear. Sadly, that sounds like a risk right now. But again, an agreement, a peace agreement that ensures a robust Afghan government and rights and human rights is very, very important. And then the United States and other countries, not just the United States, but as I said, there needs to be a light shined on what's going on. Neighboring countries, as well as the United States and its allies, must make sure that the human rights are maintained, and they're going to have to do it diplomatically and financially. And as I said, to buck up the security forces in Afghanistan, and then, as I said, just keep a spotlight on what's going on.
Yeah. So do you believe genuinely that the peace talks with the Taliban, as it's going to start again in Qatar, will lead to a durable peace in Afghanistan?
I feel like I'm having to be a magician here to figure this out, or what do you call it, a fortune teller? Listen, I do think if there's women at the peace table, it's going to be more likely to be successful than not. But it's a risk. I mean, the Taliban, I think we know, it's not a group that we can trust. That's for sure. Our country and other countries that have been involved in war in the last 20 years, I mean, it is just, what they say is enough. It's enough. The people back here in America have had enough of war in Afghanistan. But with that said, there's many of us, I will tell you this, the members in Congress who I talk to, people who actually have some understanding of what's happening are very concerned. And we're not ready to throw up our hands in a way to say, hey, we're going to walk away. This is a mess. You know, we can't do anything about it. We have to continue, as I said, in every way reasonably and legally possible to make sure that we use every diplomatic means, whether it's financial, incentives, sanctions, communications, for human rights to be maintained and to the violence to be gone.
I hope so.
And let me just say, you know, I heard a couple of weeks ago, I had our Women, Peace and Security Caucus of the Congress had a Zoom meeting with the 4 women negotiators, who are the 4 women Afghan negotiators at the peace table. I will tell you that they all had something a little different to talk about. The women who were from the more urban areas, they had very heightened fears of human rights being lost. The woman who came from a more rural area where there's so much fighting, her top concern was just an end of the violence. So everyone isn't necessarily on the same page. So what is it, you know, and that's going to influence, obviously, what the result will be in a peace talks. Is it, let's just stop the fighting? Okay, stop the fighting, but does that mean everybody goes back under the thumb of the Taliban and the women are back in their homes and, you know, their rights are taken away? Or I mean, what is, so it's hard to say and to know what the outcome will be.
Yeah. So just last question, what's your thoughts about Afghan women education opportunities, as Taliban claim that they have changed and they will allow education according to Islamic Sharia rules, but many women from all walks of life, they're concerned and they think of what happened in the 1990s when the Taliban ruled the government, that it will be the scenario that they should expect. How U.S. can ensure, like there was some bipartisan also bill on protecting women and minorities' rights in Afghanistan, how they can ensure that it won't happen and they will have the opportunities that they have?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned education, because I do think that getting girls educated is probably one of the best missions that we can have worldwide. And we do know that it's not just the Taliban, but the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, set back the education of girls and the rights of girls almost a generation. It's been a terrible situation all around the world. We have a bill here in Congress. It's called Keeping Girls in School Act, and it's a bipartisan piece of legislation, which I co-lead with actually my co-chair of the Women, Peace and Security Caucus, that's Representative Mike Walsh, also of Florida. And it recognizes that there are unique obstacles that keep especially adolescent girls from accessing education. And the legislation will give the funding and the tools to our USAID agency to address and reduce barriers like sexual violence, family obligations, female genital mutilation, a lack of safety, all so many factors that actually keep young girls out of school. And no better example now than what we've seen in Afghanistan in recent months: bombings of schools, attacks of teachers. We've got, as I said, use every tool in our toolbook, diplomatic toolbook, to keep that from happening.
I hope so. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Good to talk to you. Appreciate your input. It's a very important time for us. Thank you so much.
I'll be thinking and of the women in Afghanistan to just keep your courage. There are many of us who are in this with you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I appreciate it. You have a great day. Thank you so much.